Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. Story 1. The date was December 24, 1968. My father and I are flying back to Pennsylvania from Detroit, Michigan. We'll arrive at the airport around 8:40 p.m. We're preparing for takeoff. There's no forewarning of impending disaster. The plane collides with trees and lands on a mountainside. The plane flips over and lands in a marsh where snow and mud cover everything due to the velocity of the impact and the torn holes in the fuselage. I'm fully awake. Nonetheless, my mind is immediately putting everything together. Because I'm covered in snow, I thought I went through the window. Outside, I believe I'm on the runway and hear ambulance sirens. I'm thinking the great assistance is on its way. The truth is that I'm not on the runway and did not pass through the window. There were also no sirens. It's amazing what the mind will do to protect itself when making sense becomes impossible. God damn it. I broke my nose, I exclaimed. I thought I had broken my nose because blood was trickling down my face. My nose was not broken, but the impact caused a large abrasion on the right side of my face. I couldn't make out anything. It was pitch black and my right arm was pinned beneath me, my fist in the middle of my breastbone. I could move my left arm and hand. I was attempting to dig myself out of the snow. The pile seemed to go on forever, and the more I tried to reach out and see if I could dig myself out, the more snow I felt. I then tried to move by pushing my legs and feet to free myself. I was lying on my stomach. My legs and feet extended behind me, and my right cheek was flat. My feet could only kick a few inches. I was suffocated. I had no idea the plane had flipped when I was trapped in my seat with the seatbelt at the time. The man next to me had also pinned me against the window. My nose and mouth had sucked in the marsh muck. The rescuer told me about my condition 40 years later, in December. He tracked me down on the internet, where I left a comment after reading about my plane crash. The rescuer said he dug the muck out of my mouth and nose 4 hours after the crash so I could breathe. I was the only one who survived. When I couldn't move, I started hearing screaming all around me. God help us, my father yelled over and over. As if people were walking on top of me, I became aware of pressure. Stop walking on me, I yelled. I became terrified of the screams and sounds, and I began to feel as if I couldn't breathe. I was running out of oxygen. I reached for my father's hand, or thought it was my father's hand. Daddy, I'm dying, I told him. His hand was trembling uncontrollably like a leaf. This scared me to death. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't take a breath. I drew my hand away. I was 17 years old when I realized I was going to die. I was raised Catholic, so I began to wonder who and what I was sorry for that I needed to confess before I died. I began to consider the things I was sorry for, and in the midst of it, I simply thought, what I've done, I've done. That was my exact words. Looking back on this experience, I find it amusing that I said this. I had had enough. It was too late, I reasoned. It's all over. The next sensation is a profound sense of calm and peace. I felt as if someone had wrapped me in a black velvet blanket. It was a very soothing sensation. I've never felt such a strong sense of peace. Suddenly, I'm outside in the air, just a short distance from the plane. I see my own and my father's bodies. My father's body emits a bluish, gray light energy. Oh, Daddy died, I think, matter-of-factly and without emotion. I see my body and a bluish, gray light enters it. I simply observe. I had no idea and do not question it. I simply observe. Oh, the plane crashed on an Indian burial ground. This is something I feel rather than see, but I know it's true. I then find myself in a location that reminds me of New York City's Grand Central Station. It's a gray area, neither dark nor light. There's a lot going on. There are people everywhere. The acoustics were extremely loud. I'm keeping an eye on two groups of events. On my left, I notice people walking two by two in a very calm manner. The first is a person who crossed, and the second is their guide. I sensed calm and support, and they appeared to be fine. When I looked to my right, I noticed people huddled in circles. Their heads were all bowed, and I had a foreboding, sad, and forlorn feeling. I sensed bewilderment and dread. It wasn't pleasant. I realized both groups were survivors of the crash. Guides arrived to assist those on the left, while those on the right were having difficulty. I'm not sure why. I then began to move quickly, passing the people on the left with their guides. Why am I moving so fast while they're moving so slowly? I wondered. I found myself traveling at warp speed through this tunnel. It was bright and light, but I could see through the darkness. I could see infinity out there. I came to a halt as quickly as I had begun. I stood on what appeared to be the edge of a lake. It wasn't a bright place. It was dim, and I could hear the sound of water as if I were at the shore of a lake. It was peaceful and rhythmic, as if little taps of water were hitting the shoreline. I was alone, and everything was quiet, except for the sound of water, a river, or a lake. Suddenly, I heard giggling and laughing. Looking up and across this lake, river, divide, or whatever, I noticed three spheres on my far left. They resembled large cotton balls, but they were ethereal rather than dense. They were ecstatic to see me. I was aware of it. I had a feeling. Everything said was telepathic, as if energy thoughts were being transmitted. Communication was quick. I didn't have to wait or consider it. I had a feeling. Their joy and laughter spread like wildfire. All I wanted to do was go over there. It was very appealing. For example, if you're sitting in a restaurant and the table next to you is laughing hysterically, you want to find out what's so funny and laugh with them. I was eager to investigate what was so amusing. They immediately came to a halt and said, "No, we'll travel to you." They were on my side in the next split second. They all came to me at once. They merged into me, and I realized how effective communication without words can be. It takes so long to say words. That was the last thing that occurred. The next thing I know, I'm in the plane, and I hear someone say, "Oh my God, there's someone else in there." I called out. The plane went down around 8:40 p.m. According to what I was told, my rescue took place around 1 a.m. It was -5 degrees with snow falling and a wind chill factor that night. This is according to the rescuer who recorded the account the next day, 40 years ago. I have the recording. The rescuer gave me a copy. Another story is about the changes that occurred as a result of this experience. I'm working on a book about surviving trauma and coming out the other side. Thank you to whoever created this space to break the silence about near-death experiences. Story number 2. I was 16 years old when I was involved in a car accident with a school bus. I felt myself outside the car after the car I was riding in landed. People were running toward the accident, which I noticed. I recall a man attempting to save the boy beside me. I began to rise above the scene, still watching, but I could tell something wasn't right. As I float above the scene, I pass a traffic signal that wasn't even installed until the following week. Soon after, I began to feel warmth radiating from the left and above me. When I looked down to see what was causing the heat on my shoulder, I realized I didn't have one. My gaze was drawn to the left and higher up, where I saw the most beautiful bright white light I'd ever seen. I was drawn to it and started walking toward it. When I realized how effortless it was and that I didn't have real eyes, my attention was drawn downward. Following that, I had a past life review in which I saw and understood everything that had ever happened in my life. I saw things that I'd done, things that others had done to me, and places I'd been. Then I felt heat on my no shoulder and shifted my focus upward and to the left. As I continued to rise, the heat increased. I was surrounded by love and electricity. I swam in it, twirling and feeling the complete bliss that the heat and love provided. Then 5 shadows appeared in the distance and began to approach me, but they came to a halt. They were familiar to me, but I couldn't place them. I started receiving thought talk after they stopped. They were debating whether or not I could accompany them. I heard that it wasn't my time eventually. I begged and pleaded in my own mind for them to take me with them, but they refused. One shadow lingered behind me, signaling that there was still work for me to do. When I awoke from my 2-week coma, all I could think about was that experience. I couldn't speak for more than a week, and it seemed like I spent the majority of my awake time somewhere between the light and the hospital room. When I was finally able to speak, I began telling my family about my ordeal. They were perplexed and directed me to my doctor. My doctor and family dismissed my experience, telling me not to bring it up again, because I sounded insane and I didn't want people to think I was insane, so I stopped talking about it. For months, it didn't leave my mind. And then I started noticing that I knew things I couldn't possibly have known. Examples include knowing when and how people would die, spirits speaking to me in my dreams about events in my life, being able to read people's thoughts, and knowing who was coming to the house or calling. I noticed spirits hovering around or behind people. I knew who I'd run into in town, and so on. This became too much for me to bear, so I turned to alcohol and drugs to escape the knowledge I had and to silence the prophetic dreams I was having. I eventually became an alcoholic and remained altered in some ways for many years. I've been sober for 2 years and told my NDE story to an audience of people who, 30 years later, were much more receptive and did not dismiss me as insane. Souls who've passed often contact me, particularly loved ones, sometimes within hours of their physical death. Sometimes it takes days, but they always appear. I've become extremely spiritual after becoming aware of the guides in my life. Today, my life is focused on others, which I believe is my purpose, to help others heal through my natural gifts and training in massage and Reiki. I have much more to say, but I'll stop here. My life changed when I accepted my NDE experience, and it continues to improve every day, and I have no fear of death in the least. Death would be an opportunity for my soul and spirit to reflect on what it has learned during this lifetime. I'm completely blessed by a power greater than any of us.